Welcome to Craft It a Happy podcast, a special series on our Sacred Stories podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible stories of grit, grace, and love in our new book, Craft It a Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. I am your host, Rev Ariel Patricia, and together we will answer the question, do bad things happen to good people, or could the difficulties we face be gifts in disguise? Today we are speaking with Deborah Beauvais, whose story in Craft It a Happy is titled Search Within. Deborah Beauvais is the founder and owner of Dreamvisions 7 radio network, which was created out of love with a vision to consciously serve humanity. She is an intuitive, healer, and facilitator of light as a Reconnective healing and the Reconnection practitioner, trained by Dr. Eric Pearl. Deborah is founder of the Kids for Love Project and Kids for Love Project radio show. She is the author of The Paper Doll Kids, co-written with Janine Sullivan. Her syndicated radio show, Love by Intuition, fosters love, healing, and unity. And it is my delight to say welcome, Deborah Beauvais, to Craft It a Happy.
Thank you for having me, Patricia. And it's an honor to be here.
Oh, I'm just so excited. Listeners, Deborah Beauvais was also in our book, Chaos to Clarity. And in both books, she has written just a really beautiful, inspiring story, different stories about different experiences in her life. Actually, this one is almost like a deeper look. A deeper look into the personal journey, I would say, right, Deborah, than based on your first story in Chaos to Clarity.
I agree, yes.
So it's a beautiful story. It's titled Search Within, and I'd like to start by asking you to share with our audience what your story is about.
All right. Well, it all started first of all, I'd like to say that I do believe through all these years that we choose to be here on earth, and that all of our experiences actually happen for us to learn and grow our souls. And some of it is very heavy and painful, and you don't feel as though you can get through it or even stay on earth. But I truly believe that if you have the bravery to stay and continue, you come away with so many gifts that you couldn't even imagine that you could receive. And when I say gifts, it's not so much as a present or a tangible item. What I'm speaking of is the gift through loss, through abuse, through recovery, through whatever it is that you're experiencing. These gifts always intertwine, and it grows your soul. You become wiser, and it enriches the life that you go from there. You become very grateful. So I had a tumultuous childhood, as many people have, and it affected the choices that I made along the way with abuse. And then I found my amazing, phenomenal partner, which was my husband of 17 years, and we had 3 girls, and he was killed in a accident, it was actually a motorcycle accident, to be exact. And I always like to share that he was one who trained people how to ride safely and get certifications. He was a very safe driver, so it wasn't about that. But he was killed suddenly in an accident on the way to work, and I found out through a phone call. It was interesting because the police did not show up. The doctor from the ER called. And so I went into shock. I think I've shared that I cried for years. And it was just I have to say, and those that have experienced it with someone very, very close or with a child, every inch, every piece of your body aches and in pain like you have some astronomical disease. And you're really in a fog. The fog went on for a couple of years, and then from there you're faced with the reality of what you have to do. You have to pick up the pieces. And so I have become the mother, the father, the friend, everything to my girls. And they were very dear to me because now all I had was them. And so what happens when you experience this kind of tragedy, you do go into shock because you're not prepared. It's not like when someone is ill and there's still fear and tragedy, of course, but this is a shock. So you put one day into a family with everyone has their responsibilities and you're resonating in joy and love, and then the next moment that's over. So through all that I experienced, the girls grew up, they became amazing young women. They went through the rest of school because they were young, and then they all went on to college. And through it all, I became a very strong individual. And so I don't know how much more you want me to get into it at this juncture, Patricia.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I appreciate the sharing, because I mean you're speaking about, you know, a very personal subject, and of course, you know, even you're jokingly saying, you know, I cried for years. I mean, that really is a reality. And so I think, you know,
Right.
many years have passed, and you're able to frame it, you know, in a way to speak about it, to help others. But I just want to acknowledge that this, you know, this is kind of a big deal. And Deborah, you are the kind of person that really, you know, you're the personification of the crappy to happy stories, you know, that,
Right.
and you starting off even saying that, you know, it takes it takes, you know, I say stamina, you know, but strength sometimes to move through this world. Absolutely. And
Mm.
but you still pointed to gifts, you know, you still pointed to
Right.
the gifts that can come from it. So I just wanted to just, before we continue, just acknowledge that this story is it is deep, and it is painful, and it is one that you survived to begin with, and then you went on to build from there. And
Right. Yeah. It's funny because when the girls were younger, you know, a few years after everything happened, we used to talk about, gee, if Dad was here, would we be doing this? Or if Dad was here, would we be, you know, experiencing this or that? Because it does turn your life upside down. And it is, what comes with it is a lot of responsibility, creativity, um, coming up with ideas on how to bring the kids up in a way that they are, you know, good people, and yet you're not too overpowering with them, and yet you don't want to be a friend because there's that balance there. But the responsibility, I guess, was the biggest lesson, other than survival and being here without that partner. Because for my person, I mean, for some people that their husbands or wives transition to another place, it gives them an opportunity to find maybe their soulmate. And for me, Rick was everything. You know, he was the opposite of my first marriage. So people used to marvel at us. So he was just everything. And he was an exceptional dad, bringing them to the library and getting them involved with camping and nature and all that. But the responsibility comes, there's so many what's the word I'm trying to think? There's so many variables that come up when you experience something like this. And when you open yourself up to consciously live from a place of growth, soul growth, all kinds of things open up, and you revisit childhood wounds. That child memory is there. You connect with it, and a lot of things bubble up. So for me, with the responsibility, it was just overpowering for me, overwhelming, should I say. But I got through it. And what brought the gift to me is revisiting my childhood and seeing that I chose my parents and they did the best they could with what they knew at the time. But my mom had mental health issues and she added alcohol to it. My dad was a farmer, so we grew up in the land and nature. And my dad was someone that was very laid back, a man of a few words. At the end of his life, I was able to get him to openly say he loved us kids as adults. But it gives you kind of an idea of who he is. He was just very quiet. He was brought up in an environment that didn't show affection or love. And my mom yearned for that. And my mom was actually abused as a child and was given up. So naturally they had issues. But the gift that I found is that my mom in the early days, she used to make costumes for Halloween, coats for us to, this is very in the early day, like before I'd say up until I was 8 years old. And she was an excellent cook. I mean, she made dinners on Sunday. She did a lot of things in the early days, so it brought my appreciation and turned my thoughts from really anger to loving her as she was. So that's one of the joyful, happy things that came out of that. And then embracing my dad. And recently, I have to say that he visited me in the dreams and acknowledge that he truly loved and is still supporting myself and I'm sure my siblings. So there's all these things that are weaved in, and you become a strong, creative individual. Who would know that I would have started a radio network, a station. So here we are, Patricia. But and I have to really point out that through all that I've experienced, I've been able to help others. And that is something that really, it's helping others. And I'm sure you have found that out as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, so it's interesting because your story in Chaos to Clarity, your healing and part of your healing journey was when you were helping others, right? So you were able to come up for air through your grief in helping and serving others. Your story in Crappy to Happy is search within. And so I'm so happy that you brought your parents into the conversation because that is the journey, right? That you write about that and other things in this book, because there's the inner journey and the outer journey, right? But discovering, going deeper and understanding more of our experiences is the search within,
It is. It's really what it's all about, and that's the main lesson I think that we find is all our answers, all our healing, everything is inside of us. It's not on the outside. We're always looking on the outside, but the joy really comes from when you allow yourself to feel these things, question them, and embrace them in a sense, and then you release them and you find you soften your thoughts around them. You change your way of thinking about tumultuous things. I mean, the things that we experienced were something that you wouldn't want anyone to experience, and yet I'm okay with it now. I'm really okay with it. And recently, one of Rick's best friends, uh, actually was killed in a motorcycle accident. He was sitting at a light down in Florida. Um, he was just waiting to get gas, and someone didn't see him, and he was killed instantly. And so I'm honored to keep in touch with Laura, his wife, and she wants to hear, parts of things that normally no one else would want to hear, but she's asking a lot of questions, and her journey will be different than mine, and yet I can support her, answer her questions, and some of them are very deep, but I'm honored to help her. And I find it fascinating years later that Buzzy is what his nickname was, would transition in the same way. And yet here we are coming together, intertwined again.
Mm. It really is. It's just really fascinating. And the gifts, the gifts that we can keep giving, when we're I think in tune enough and if healed through enough that we're able to see that and appreciate them. Deb, it's really fascinating. I just want to touch on one point because it seems to be coming up in not only in my own personal life, did I also go through this, but in a lot of the interviews for Crappy to Happy. Adult people, like ourselves, talking about the wounds of childhood, talking about going back as adults, and revisiting and deepening into the relationships and learning more about it, or understanding and coming to a place of healing through that process. And when I first started the process, I felt a little embarrassed because I was like, I'm an adult. I was a child. Like that's not shouldn't be impacting me now. I should be over it. I'm an adult. Or, I would go back to that. And it took a lot. Honestly, it took a lot for me to feel, I think, comfortable as an adult to even consider that maybe some of the recurring issues or thoughts or patterns in my life really were born from early childhood or experiences with childhood. And so I guess I just want to really bring that to light, because I feel that if I had such a resistance to it, being the adult, that others do too. And so what would you say to others, you having the same experience, what in your story being about, search within, really going through that process, what would you say to others about that, to give them more clarity maybe on how they can do it?
Yeah, well, I think that everyone has their own way of journeying through things. And however it starts, if you're embarrassed or feeling kind of funky or weird because these things are cropping up, I believe that it's all okay. It's all okay. And it's really be revisiting. It's an opportunity, really, an opportunity to revisit the things that have happened to us, for us, however you want to look at it. I mean, and it's hard to even look at things that are very dark and ugly and say it's an opportunity for us. But it's not an opportunity in that sense. It's an opportunity for our souls to grow so that we can have a fuller life, so we can find that joy, and not on the outside, but the joy of just watching a hummingbird. It sounds silly, But as you do the healing work and as you go along through your whole entire life, you experience some of the most profound things that you feel as though, oh my gosh, if I had to transition and die at this moment, I'd be okay with it because of the experience I just have had. And that's with nature or something synchronistic or anything of when we're flowing in the glow of the energy of this universe, of God and all that is to be. So I think when someone does feel embarrassed and such, I think it's just because it's new to them. It's something they're not familiar with. But I always like everyone to sit quietly, like a meditation, but just sit quietly and pay attention to your breathing and just arch your arms and up your palms up and just see what happens. And a lot of times one starts connecting with child experiences. And you're able to, be brave enough to look at it because so many people are in stress, especially now. They're in stress, they're confused, they're in fear of what's happening. There's uncertainty with the COVID and all that's happening in the world. But there is no guarantee of what's going to happen anyway. So channel that fear and that anger into love. And when you're resonating in the love, that's when you feel power. And it's not power to take over someone else. It's power of being, power that all is going to be right with your world, your family, and the extended family, and all over the world. People will feel that love. And that all comes from sitting quietly and connecting with the God source, the source of who we are. We are the source. And we forget that, or we don't know it yet. We are already that, and it's just remembering to get back to what we are. We are love, but we're here on earth to experience all these things, and people are making choices that may not be to the highest good, so they have to question themselves and all of that. I mean, there's so much that goes on when you open yourself up, and it's really opening your heart. When you open your heart and you're sitting there in the quiet time, that's when, the nectar of life happens. And then you want more of that nectar. And you can revisit that feeling, that experience at times during the day when you're overwhelmed or you're having a hard day. I mean, everyone, regardless of how awakened or conscious they are, we all have days where we're in the stuff, but we can remind ourselves to release that. That's a long way of answering your question.
No, but it's all thank you. It's all, it all is very true, and it's very relevant. And I want to ask you, because listeners, you can hear the passion in Deborah Beauvais' voice. You know that she is walking her walk. She is she's had lived experiences, and that's what our stories are. So Deborah, what I really admire about you is that you haven't become your story, but through your lived experience of your story, you are giving back, you are sharing, you are finding that deeper connection with your soul and helping others. And again, you personify the crappy to happy story. And so I'd like to ask you, as we wrap up, I'd like to ask you, your greater work is immense, and a part of it is your Dreamvisions 7 radio network, which is filled with shows to help, as we said in the beginning, to consciously serve humanity, right? And so please tell our listeners how they can find out more about Dreamvisions 7 radio network and your specific show, also Love by Intuition.
Well, thank you. And before I share that, I would just like to say that where I am today, I may be different a year from now, more evolved. Who knows? But it takes time. You know, I think we're hard on ourselves, and it takes time once we become awakened. So be kind to yourself. As far as Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, which is my baby, it's 13 years old. It is a syndicated Boston-based internet radio station with all the bells and whistles, video, whatever platform you listen to, radio, we're there. The whole mission of the station, and this was 13 years ago, which is so apropos today, was to help people heal, help people find joy, help people find peace within their lives. And I mean, a simple thing, which is a phenomenal thing, is to find peace on the outside in the world, we have to start with ourselves. Well, it isn't all that easy, but that's how we change. The energetic vibrations change once more of us are resonating in love and joy for ourselves and others. So that's really what the station is all about. And everyone that comes to us is on that same wave. They may have their own mission, their own way of supporting or helping others, different modalities. Some of our hosts are MDs, like Dr. Bernie Siegel and Dr. Emmett Miller, Dr. Carolyn Dean, who's phenomenal. So and then we have regular people, but profound wisdom that they have to help others. They're not better than anyone else, but we're here to help others. We all need to be, you know, it's all about being together and helping each other in community, just reaching out to others. So that's really what the station is all about. And that's all the people that come are on that same beautiful wave. And it's dreamvision7radio.com.
And 7 is the number 7.
The number 7, which is my fortunate number since I was little. And the Love by Intuition show is on the same wave. It's all about going within, loving yourself, all kinds of different guests, authors. So that's been going on for 16 or 17 years. Yeah. So I welcome everyone for a listen. You can get the apps. Yeah. So thank you, Ariel, Patricia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I encourage everyone to check out Dreamvisions. Visions is with an S, 7, number 7, radio.com. And Deborah Beauvais show, specifically Love by Intuition. Deborah, thank you so very much for being an author in Crappy to Happy and for sharing your wisdom and your story with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you do, Patricia.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. Well, I get to talk with people like you, so it's, it's a good day, Deborah. And our new book, Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy, listeners, is really just jam-packed. Honestly, when we say true stories of grit, grace, and love, we're not kidding. And I would encourage you to pick up a copy. It's available through Amazon, booksellers worldwide, or direct from Sacred Stories Publishing. And so thank you for listening. I'm your host, Rev Ariel Patricia, and you know what I'm going to say. Until next time, I encourage you, as always, to write your sacred story well.